So yeah, firstly, for the Escape team, thank you so much for inviting me to this event. This is fun. I'm Arvi. I yeah, of course, I'm here to talk about my mistakes in building an AppSec team. And before we go further, I want a little bit about me. I'm the AppSec manager at SeatGeek, and I was at DocuSign, and I was an engineer in DocuSign and Nike and software at VMware. I added AppSec as many times as possible to show I'm legit. So hopefully, my this bragging is enough, uh, so that I can jump to the point. But yeah, before we jump into and I go into details of my talk, I wanted to give a spoiler alert. It's more of a spoiler, really. Um, I'm still employed. That's to say, this is not a story about how I screwed up so bad that I got kicked out of the job or I lost my job or anything like that. This talk is more about the mistakes I made, and I see many making in our industry in many cases with all the good intention, and in the hopes of a change or in the hope of being helpful to other uh, managers and other leaders who are trying to build their team. To talk a little bit of about the inspiration of where this talk or where I'm coming from, I wanted to share about this book where when I was in my transition from an IC towards towards a manager, I read a lot of management books, and most of the books are written by highly successful CEOs, and once they have like a humongous career, then they write these management books, and many times it ends up being about the really big problems they face on dealing with VCs or changing the company culture overnight and bringing revenue, etc. But when you're just starting out, like, you want something that's closer to the ground and something that talks about the, in a hindsight, might be a silly problem, but when you are in that situation, it's big. And this is the one book that gave me a really good perspective on the minutia of being a manager. And the author spoke a lot about their experiences and the mistakes they made earlier in their career, and that helped me a lot. Like, that helped me a lot in my journey and confidence in not making that mistakes. So yeah, I'm just saying this. I'm giving this talk before I get too big and don't remember about all the mistakes I made. I'm trying to talk about it. In general, jumping in, I want to tell that in our industry needs to talk a little bit more about our failures, our mistakes, because security teams and security engineers often lead a lonely journey, and at least it feels like that in many cases. And if you do your job really well, at times you might be invisible and our wins might go unnoticed. So obviously we are a bit cagey about our failures. We don't want to talk about it. And also, it, considering the industry, we work on a lot of confidential projects. Sometimes we can't even share it with our own colleagues. So I understand the hindrance to talk about failures, but because we don't do that, like, the only failures we end up talking about is when an incident happens in a company, and at that time everybody wants to talk about it. But I think we need to talk a little bit earlier to talk about the mistakes or failures and the smaller cultural and process issues that eventually lead up to the big ones, so that we can address these instead of astroturfing over it. In the spirit of that, here are my mistakes. I will go one by one. So yeah, let's jump into the very first one. And by the way, I just really love generating AI images, and these presentations are just an excuse for me to build more and more meaningless images. And some of them are, yeah, it doesn't make much sense, but yeah, let's just go with it. Uh, so yeah, I think when you this was a at SeatGeek, that was the first team I built from the scratch, And when you want to build your own team, you want to build a best possible program, and that's in your head. But you understand you don't have the scale of either Netflix, Meta, like really big companies. So you want to do really as much as you can with the team you have. And you want to build a really strong team that can scale in with 10x engineers, etc. But the mistake I feel like I did was start from the question, what does the best security team has or do? And you many times to think of, okay, this is the tooling that's gaining a lot of notoriety, and this is the process, or this is the program, like either a security champion or even the famous SaaS tool that everybody loves so much about and talks about how it's been useful. And one of the first things I did was buy one of the SaaS tools that I still love. I'm a huge fan of it, and we got it. It's a favorite among the community as well. But the company was not ready at that point, and by the time we got it, and before we could even do anything with it, we were faced with a huge amount of fires here and there, and we had to shift our strategy, work on that. And for so long, I felt like everything else is a distraction while I want to go back to what the best security team does. But the things we were working on, the fires we were extinguishing, are the ones that were having the most impact. So I feel like I should have started with, what does this company need? What would be most effective for this team, rather than to try to mold it to a idea of best security team I had in my head. And another, when you're building a new team, you don't have a very well written requirements, or at least people do. I didn't. That's one of the problems I had, where I had kind of I got these many headcounts, and you have an archetype of, this is the type of engineers I want. So in that case, it's easy to fall into your own bias, where I started as a software developer, so I had a strong bias towards people who had software developing experience. And in some cases, while the engineers were great, some engineers, or one engineer we had, like you need more of a structure. It was a software engineer who has not worked in a really chaotic experience of building a new team would not be a good fit, just because your bias says so. So it is always important to start with kind of open-ended and people who you can trust and build a team with, rather than think, what are the puzzle pieces for a best or security program. Uh, Going on to next one. There's another, I think it's all of us do have this, but obsession with best practices is a thing with security in some cases. As far as I've seen, security engineers are highly technical and skilled. In many cases, I have seen security engineers, or the team itself, knows more about all the products and how they interlink with each other, more than some of the engineers who work on the small part of those products. And and I was a security engineer, so we did go to painstaking efforts to understand the product, every nook and cranny, and understanding the code base inside out. But we don't take the same amount, or even a fraction of that effort, in understanding companies' business. What do we sell, like, or how are we pricing it, and what drives our growth? What the security measures I'm proposing, will it have an adverse effect, etc. Like, you would never, like, we don't take enough care to understand that deeply. And this might not be needed if you're in if you are building a strong enterprise software, or you're in a sector where security is paramount. But especially if you're in a B2C area, etc., like, when you're facing a tough competition, security teams cannot be indifferent to businesses. And one of the early mistakes I made was I had proposed a few change. I had reviewed our product and I had proposed a few changes to our user journey, and I got an immediate pushback on, hey, why is this necessary to build, and why do we need to do it now? And I was a little surprised because in my head, that was an industry standard. And I gave an answer which probably a word salad of, yeah, it's industry standard, it's best practice, so I don't need to justify too much. But it's a fair question for engineers to ask: what is the risk of building this and not building this, and what is the opportunity cost? And we cannot hide behind, oh, this is the best practice, or everybody does it kind of answer. We need to take a little more effort in understanding the business and speak the same language, and they use the same product argument as product teams do. Going to the next one, I think many of us would probably relate to this one, where security, if you're in a security field, even if you're not much of a, you know, a hacker, you would consider, for some reason, you would think you're a bit of a hacker. Like I'm not good at bug hunting, but I still think like if I'm talking to somebody who knows nothing about security, I would still pose a little bit as a hacker. So I think that's in all of us, or maybe I'm projecting. But in any case, like when a bunch of security engineers are at the table, a subtle competition is always won by the one who can come up with the worst case scenario for that risk, how much you can escalate it. And obviously, like we would all want to entertain that, and that's a good way of looking at things as well. But there is always a hesitation among engineers on pushing back on the likelihood, so that you don't want to come off as you're downplaying the risk, or you don't consider the security the most important thing. In many cases, I have seen and heard engineers and security leaders hesitate to, go for risk mitigation versus resolution, because if we give them mitigation, it might be used as an excuse for not resolving something, which I understand. But in some cases, mitigation might be the best for business. Like you may not need full resolution. That's not always the case, but there will be some cases. And we need to think more about why that's the case. And we should not be afraid to say, yes, you can make it worst case scenario. That doesn't mean what are the can be reduce the likelihood. And we should put ourselves in the shoes of product, and we should think like product engineers at times. Moving on to the next one. And speaking of product shoes, uh, I wanted to talk about pushing left or shifting left. I feel like there's two talks today of shifting left and the problems with it. So I don't think I need to spend too much time on it, but there's a lot of overlap, I would say, in there. Many times it does come across as an excuse to not get our hands dirty, not get in and fix it. And I started my career as a software engineer, so at least I pride myself on being extremely cognizant about developer experience, and I understand the pressure they are in. So when I try to talk about pushing left, it's like, no, let's make the process easier for them. But even with those intentions, many times because the team is smaller and the scalability is limited, so we end up adding, okay, a requirement for people to come to security reviews. We add an agenda item to the documentation where you have to go through either threat modeling, or you have to include as in code review if you touch a specific type of product, etc. Or even at times you can automate it, but it's still, even with all that, it adds more onus on the engineering, where they have to include you, they have to keep in mind the amount of time the reviews take, and it's a lot on them. And it feels like when we keep talking about shifting left and how much time it would save because you don't have to resolve it later, it's even though they're valid arguments, it doesn't feel that like that for an engineer. That would be uh, all the fancy words of like golden path or paved road, whatever it may be. Like all of them are really good ideas, but unless you get your hands dirty and build with them, it feels more like a roadblock. And one engineer at some point told me, I was asking why didn't they go through a review, or why didn't they loop us in? Told it would have, we felt like it would go faster if security was not involved about it. And as much as I hate it and it hurts a little bit, it was true. Like I should understand that and try to see how we can help them in those aspects. And we need to shift left as well if if you're asking others to do it. And coming to kind of the final point of it, and it's probably my biggest learning, and also it might be a bit of a hot take. I don't know how many agree with me there, but we always kind of start with. I started working on security somewhere around 2015, sometime there. Even many meetups I used to go to, I hear this there, and even now, few I have been to post pandemic, I do hear the people talking about how engineering or engineering leaders don't understand the security implications, or if only they understand, they would definitely fix it. I think that hypothesis is a bit outdated and it's wrong. Like we have done a lots and lots. Every company does security awareness and training, etc. At this point, we should think, okay, engineers probably understand the security implications, not as much as we do, but to a good extent. But then they're also weighing the bugs and the tickets you send with the risks of not doing a feature, not doing a customer ask. So what would be the risk to business? So they're weighing against all that and they're choosing something to work on that's not security. So we need to shift a little bit. I think engineering practices itself have evolved a lot in the last decade. Many companies are moving away from dedicated testing teams. Many companies are moving away from dedicated site reliability team, or they're reducing the size of those in favor of self-service. Not that I'm thrilled about all that, not that I agree with all those changes, but I feel like security org still, in many cases, sits as a testing and consulting team, even though we don't like to think about ourselves like that. We are not I feel like we're not evolving at the same rate with the new ways of building things in the modern companies. So we need to start becoming more of engineering teams that provide solutions and guardrails. And the whole industry and security engineers and the tooling industry we have, all the tools that are coming, we should move away from a focus on detection and reporting uh, to more towards prevention and resolution. Because without that, like we have gotten really good at finding bugs, but we are not. We have to get better at preventing and resolving it. And I'm definitely not arguing we should all go and we should fix bugs. I still think we should train engineers, and we should help them so that it doesn't happen again. There can be learnings from it, and it sets a bad precedent where you go and fix it and you just let somebody else. It just incentivizes not worrying about security. But we should definitely start building our way into security rather than scolding our way into security. So yeah, that's probably my bigger learning and bit of hot take. Okay, I think I've been running ahead of time, so I'm gonna jump to the last few slides. So a parting thought I wanted to say is just building a team, especially building a security team, is it's really fun. I think it might just be a self-talk or a talk for a future generation, really. But I really enjoy my building the team itself, and whatever problems you are building the team for in 6 months, or whatever the timeline is, you will not be working on the same problems that you think that are problems right now. So, as with any other journey, failure is expected in building these security teams, and we should embrace that. We should share it with each other, and so that we help each other in not doing the same mistakes again. So yeah, hope of that's the hope I started this talk with. And yeah, I'll end with that. Thank you so much again. I will, for any questions, comments, even compliments, it's okay.
Yeah, I think you're fishing for compliments here.
Shit.
But it was actually a fun session, and I love hot takes, so it's always welcome. And I think it was a great closing session. Oh, there is a question from David. Let's see. So, any advice becoming a trusted advisor to the dev teams? How do you get them to come to you instead of ignoring you because it slows things down?
That's a really good question. I mean, I wish I cracked the solution, but I felt like the trusted advisor thing. I think that's something I achieved through understanding how they make decision on building multiple either when they have so many features they can build, they have so many customer asks, they, how they decide to build, how they take revenue into consideration, how they track how they track the conversion from a user entering our website to buying something from our website. And also they perform A/B tests on everything. So when I'm proposing a new change to how our user journey should be, our account should be secured, I it's not that difficult to go through now. Now the A/B test, or even getting the asking data team for a little help to understand what would be the impact. It's not that difficult. It just seems way too complicated for us because we don't try to. So yeah, when I started talking in those sense and backing my claims and my proposals with data and why I'm coming with, rather than because we are security, we say so and you build it. Like when I come from that, I think I've had a really good response.
Are there any other questions? I think I don't see it in the chat, so I'll just give a second if someone maybe still typing. Otherwise, I think you got some compliments. That's at
Yes.
least.
Thank you so much for the
Yes.
compliments.
From Mikhail. From
After fishing for it. Yeah.
yeah. So that was the last part. I think definitely worked. So yeah, I think that's. Thank you so much, Dan, for sharing your insights. Just a reminder for everyone, all talks are recorded, and they'll be available directly at the platform once the event ends. And also in some time, I just don't know when, you'll be able to find them on the Elephant and AppSec YouTube channel, probably in December, not before. And thank you all for joining. Thank you for all of those who stayed with us till the end. It was a super packed day. I think with all the talks for within the two tracks. Thank you again, Ari, for your presentation. And I think something that I would like to quote is at the end of the day, as Chris Romeo said, the goal to share, contrary opinions or your opinions as general is to make people think and to make it challenge status quo. And I think that was the goal of this conference, and I really hope that all the presentations, or your presentations for people, for you are to learn from your mistakes, that all the presentation make people think and maybe reconsider the things that they're doing, and learn from others. And yeah, that